Boom. At the moment of crisis, a gust of wind came, turning into countless wind blades, turning all the crocodiles around Kuei Bull King into pieces of flesh and blood. A tall man with white wings on his back and tiger fur on his forehead descended from the sky. He pulled up Kuei Bull King's arm, put it on his shoulder, and then flew towards the back. Several tribulation thunderbolts in the sky fell, intending to block his way, but from the rear, several divine lights came to block the tribulation thunder for this winged tiger demon. Su Xiangxue looked into the distance and found that on the top of the mountain far away, there was a handsome man in white clothes who was taking back the folding fan in his hand. Noting her gaze, the man bowed his hand to her, with 9 snow-white foxtails swaying in the mountain breeze behind him. The formation is still not proficient enough after all. Su Xiangxue sighed. Fine. She stopped playing music, got up and said, "The White Crocodile Army, dispatched all to destroy the enemy troops." The gate of Yenshan opened widely, and more crocodile demons rushed out of the city on the giant crocodile. They sneaked into the battlefield that has turned into a swamp terrain, like a fish in the water, fighting with the bull demons. Taking advantage of the time, place and harmony with people, they gradually overwhelmed their enemies. The bull demons were slain so that they lost their helmets and abandoned their armor. Some of them were closer to the dry ground and had already turned and fled, while the number of those who remained in the swamp and resisted stubbornly decreased step by step. It could be seen that the battle would not last long. Seeing that the first wave of the offensive was about to win, a large number of troops suddenly appeared in the mountains on the east side of Yenshan Pass. The number of this army was small, but from the perspective of morale, they overwhelmed the Northern Demon Army and the Black Snake King troops, and their average strength and equipment level must be higher. It's the Imperial Army. In the chaos, someone noticed the banner of this army and shouted loudly. The sky suddenly changed color, and the dark clouds that Su Xiangxue summoned were taken by a white-haired middle-aged lean man wearing a black official uniform standing on the top of the mountain. Then another demon with dragon horns, who was an old man leaning on a long stick, appeared. He raised his hand and took away the control of the entire swamp. A large amount of clear water gushed out of thin air in the swamp, which formed under his control. The torrent, like a dragon spitting water, rushed endlessly and caused heavy casualties to the White Crocodile Army in the swamp. The White Bear King. After the white-haired middle-aged man in a black official uniform took away the dark clouds, he arched his hands towards the northern White Bear King's army formation. "We are here to help." At the same time, a person jumped from the cloud and landed beside Su Xiangxue. His hair was exuberant, he looked like a human-shaped monkey, his whole body was yellow, and there was a long tail wagging behind him. Unlike the Imperial Army who wore armor on the battlefield, this man was just casually wearing a simple, easy-to-action bunting cloth robe. He carried a black iron stick on his shoulder and a weed in his mouth, and smiled at Su Xiangxue with a tired face. "I'm sorry, little princess, but everything is fair in war. We have more people here." "Well indeed." Su Xiangxue wrapped her veil indifferently, put her musical instrument away and stood up. This Xiangxue's true qi is seriously depleted, so she can't play with the Ape King anymore. As she turned and left, a palm was quietly placed on the shoulder of the Ape King. "But I can." Bai Qiran smiled behind him. "Let her go back and rest, I will play with you. It's really my honor to have your favor." The Ape King laughed, but cold sweat was dripping from his forehead. After Su Xiangxue retreated, there was no danger from the thunder in the sky. The Imperial Army directly swooped down from the top of the mountain on the cloud, killing the White Crocodile Army and the Black Snake Army who were caught off guard after being hit by the Dragon King. But halfway through the rush, a large group of demon races with wings on their backs suddenly rushed down from the sky, and the mountains also broke open and countless plant demon races poured out from the soil, trapping the Imperial Capital Army. Intermediate. Dragon King. The Eagle King, with its golden wings vibrating, flew in mid-air, provoking the old man with a long stick. "Come here, I want to see between me and you, who is the overlord of the sky." And from the ground, there were countless vines surging, and the cold face of Flower King appeared among them. The demon chi made the vines flourish and released the poisonous floral fragrance. Flower King did not say a word and slammed into the Imperial Army. The two sides were entangled together. In terms of strength, the armies of Flower King and Eagle King were not as good as the Imperial Army, but now the Imperial Army was caught off guard, so the situation was at a stalemate for a while. On the other side, the Bull Demon warriors retreated under the cover of their companions. They were replaced by an army armed with terrestrial middle and low-level demon races such as tiger demon, wolf demon, leopard demon, etc. They were clothed with the demon beasts of the northern demon world. A leather armor made of thick fur with a bright blade in his hand. This group of demons roared and rushed into the swamp without fear. Their power movement has quickly frozen the water in the swamp and stepped on the ice. This group of demons and crocodile demons fought together, and instantly killed the latter without his armor and fled in embarrassment. Just as they were trying to win the pursuit, the soil on both sides of the swamp suddenly rolled and swelled, and countless huge poisonous pythons and snake demons escaped from the ground and surrounded these demon races from the two wings. The Black Snake King and the White Crocodile King also rushed out. Seeing that his army suffered heavy casualties, the White Crocodile King was angry. He roared and rushed towards the North Demon Realm's array, tearing the first two rows of demon races to pieces. Winged Tiger King, White Fox King, get out and die. Spitting out a large piece of flesh and blood that had been torn from his mouth, the White Crocodile King threw the incomplete corpse aside and roared to the sky. "Wanna die? I'll help you." In the army formation, the tall figure of Kuei Bull King who had been rescued rushed out and knocked out the White Crocodile King for several miles, and then the two beasts roared and tore each other together. The aftermath of pure power caused many shockwaves shaking the surrounding hills. And in front of the Black Snake King, there was also a handsome white-robed man who blocked his way and smiled at him. "Black Snake King, let me meet you down here." White Fox King. Seeing this man, the Black Snake King temporarily stopped and said, "Unexpectedly, this time even a carefree one like you participated in this war. This time it's a matter for the entire demon race. I'm a demon, so it's impossible to not care." The White Fox King smiled bitterly. "So instead of passively following the flow, I have no choice but to add to the flames. Then, let me learn about one of the oldest lineages in the demon world, the brilliant trick of the nine-tailed fox." The Black Snake King took a deep breath, his expression dignified. "Okay." The White Fox King arched his hands. "Black Snake King, please." In front of Yanshan Pass, the armies of the West Demon, the Northern Demon, and the Imperial Army fought each other. The powerful demon kings from all sides also matched against each other. Wave after wave of terrible energy shocks made the ground tremble, and constantly changing the surrounding terrain in subtle ways. It would take a long time to be able to tell the winner, normally, if not for someone who had overwhelming power in this war. The sudden rain of sword beam fell like a nightmare, and in the blink of an eye, the army of the Northern Demon and the Imperial Army were killed and injured more than half. In the chaos, a demon shouted loudly, "It's the Sword Patriarch! It's the Sword Patriarch of the human race!" In the next moment, the morale of North Demons who had not feared death, and the Imperial Army instantly dropped to the bottom as if they had seen the end of the world. They no longer care about the opponent in front of them, throwing away their helmets and armor, desperately using escape techniques to leave the battlefield. Even the generals in the army were retreating while calling out their soldiers to flee the battlefield. Because they knew very well in their hearts that facing the Sword Patriarch of the human race, no matter how many soldiers came, it would be nothing more than a death in vain. Before coming to the battlefield, the White Bear King and Prime Minister Yun Kuan had already given the lieutenants a place and a secret signal. Instead of letting them stay here to die, it's better to let them escape first and then gather force somewhere else. In the blink of an eye, the troops of the Northern Demon and the Imperial Army disintegrated, while the troops of the Black Snake King, under the command of the officers, took advantage of the victory and pursued them. The changes in the battle situation also affected the battles of the Demon Kings. They separated for the time being. During the confrontation, they were also looking for Bai Qiran's figure. "Are you looking for me?" Like a ghost, Bai Qiran silently fell from the sky to the side of the mountain, shocking the Dragon King and Prime Minister Yun Kuan who were fighting with Eagle King and Flower King. The two of them stepped back subconsciously, stopped in mid-air, and then looked in the direction of the sound coming from behind. Over there, Bai Qiran stood on a lone pine growing from the edge of the cliff, carrying a dying man with a blue nose and a swollen face in his hand. "Old monkey." The Dragon King was shocked. "I'll give him to you." Bai Qiran smiled and threw the unconscious Ape King towards a cliff of 10,000 meters. The Dragon King was so scared that quickly flew over and reached out to catch the Ape King. But the next moment, Bai Qiran suddenly appeared in front of him, raising his palm. With a loud noise, several layers of translucent shock waves appeared in the air. In the center of the shock wave, a white trail slammed into the ground. There was smoke and dust that stretched for several miles, shrouded in the sky. As the smoke and dust slowly dissipated, a huge crater appeared on the ground. The Dragon King and the Ape King lay at the bottom of the crater, not knowing whether they were alive or dead. The next one is you. In the blink of an eye, at almost the speed of teleportation, Baichuran once again appeared behind Prime Minister Yun Kuan. The latter had been in a state of defense. Feeling the sense of crisis coming from behind, the demon was the first to take action. His demon energy stretched indefinitely like a cloud, gathered on his fists and continued to blast towards Baichuran. Baichuran raised his hand to block it, only to feel that between the palms of Prime Minister Yun Kuan's fists, the demon energy seemed to be surging like a river, but also like a cloud and mist, and there was a vague illusion that he was very familiar with. The shape of this move is a bit like a combination of Su Xiangshue's Ecstasy Boneless Palm and Saint Buddhism Sect's Thunder Fist. From an intentional point of view, it also has the natural feeling of Mystery Academy's techniques. What are your moves? Where did you learn it? Baichuran stretched out his hand to resolve while curious. Prime Minister Yun Kuan didn't answer and attacked with his head sullenly. The palm gene he shot made a lot of bottomless fist marks on the cliff next to him. Don't want to answer, huh? Baichuran raised his hand and pushed, and Prime Minister Yun Kuan's originally flawless fist frame suddenly collapsed. You are stronger than the Black Snake King. Baichuran took a step forward and clenched his fists. But it's still useless, see clearly, Thunder Fist must be used like this. There was a thunderstorm in the clear sky, and Baichuran punched Prime Minister Yun Kuan's chest with a punch like a drum. The unparalleled true chi and turned into a fist, like an arhat beating a drum, shaking mountains and rivers. The mountain behind was blasted to pieces and Prime Minister Yun Kuan flew out upside down, hitting 4 or 5 peaks in succession, and finally stuck to a cliff somewhere, fell unconscious. Upon seeing this, Eagle King and Flower King, who had been entangled with Dragon King and Prime Minister Yun Kuan for a long time, were secretly startled. Eagle King flapped his wings and came to Baichuran, preparing to flatter the situation, but Baichuran had already stepped forward. His figure disappeared again and he reappeared near the Flying Tiger King and the White Fox King in the blink of an eye. He pushed away the White Crocodile King who was entangled with the Flying Tiger King, and then easily overwhelmed the Flying Tiger King with brute force, lifted him upside down and displayed a deadly pile driver. With a bang, the ground within a radius of several miles was fragmented, and the Flying Tiger King was at the center of the fragmentation. His whole body was upside down. Baichuran's upper body had been completely buried in the soil, looking at only that breath left. Capture him. Pointing to the White Crocodile King's nose, Baichuran walked towards the White Fox King who had just separated from the Black Snake King with his backhand. Sword Patriarch. The White Fox King touched his nose and smiled bitterly. Can I surrender now? No. Baichuran smiled and pinched his fingers one by one. You all are demon kings, so if everyone were beaten but you didn't, it's not fair. The White Fox King took a step back, raised his hands and said, Bai Ling has safely returned to the White Fox country, and I am very grateful to you for rescuing her. It's useless to pull ties. Baichuran came to the front of the White Fox King very indifferently. Besides, I almost forget what your daughter looks like. Baichuran was in the air, wrapped in layers by the scroll, and the scroll was tightly attached to his body, bursting out of a human figure, trying to swallow him into the painting. The Black Snake King fell from mid-air and saw the White Bear King pinching the magic seals and walking out of his army. His face was covered in cold sweat, and there were a lot of elite monsters behind him forming a formation to provide assistance to him with their true chi. He looked to the left and right and found that all other demon kings were beaten by Baichuran. At present there were 4 demon kings left intact on his side, and only the White Bear King and White Fox King were left on the opposite side. It's an opportunity. The Black Snake King raised his hand without hesitation. The demon energy in his body boiled, turning into a poisonous cloud in the sky and condensed in his palm. Don't think about it. 5 or 6 beams of lights shot out from the broken mountain below, dispelling the poisonous cloud condensed by the Black Snake King, and the dust-covered White Fox King rushed out from under the mountain, stretching out a folding fan to stop the Black Snake King. At this time, the White Bear King's true chi poured out again, and the bundle of giant paintings in the sky had a tendency to inhale Baichuran. Suddenly, the giant painting swelling loudly and countless blazing white sword beams shot out from the gap in the scroll, turning into a sky full of sword light, piercing the body of the White Bear King and leaving many blood holes. The White Bear King's mouth and nose were also bleeding, but he still insisted on controlling the painting. With the support of the hundreds of elite monsters behind him, the painting scroll suddenly closed, and he successfully put Baichuran into the painting. Not good. The Black Snake King was startled, turned his head and shouted at his allies. Quickly stop that bear. Upon hearing this, the White Crocodile King, Eagle King and Flower King rushed to the seriously injured White Bear King and attacked him, but it was too late. The White Bear King had already manipulated the giant painting to stop them in front of him. All the attacks were absorbed. This huge painting was so powerful that it not only sucked Baichuran in but under the control of the White Bear King, it suddenly rolled towards the 4 demon kings. The 4 were unable to resist and quickly be captured by this giant painting. The White Bear King stretched out his hand, the giant painting shrank and closed, and turned into a plain old painting, which fell into his hands, and then he turned his head and shouted at the White Fox King. Go! The White Fox King opened the folding fan, the light radiated, and the Flying Tiger King, the Ape King, the Dragon King and Prime Minister Yun Kuan, who were seriously injured and dying on the nearby battlefield, were grabbed together. He was about to follow the White Bear King to leave, but from behind came a voice with murderous intent. Want to go? The music sound was like thunder, with the meaning of killing, like a galloping army, hitting the White Fox King's metal defense hard. At the same time, sword beams were falling like rain, coming from across the sky. It's the song Wind, Rain and Thunder, played by Su Xiangxue. The White Fox King gave a wry smile, and the 9 tails behind him stretched like a peacock, opening and closing the fan in his hands, doing everything with all his strength, emitting a divine light. The sword beam and the divine light collided, and the surrounding sceneries were immediately devastated. The White Fox King withdrew from the aftermath range, wiped a handful of blood from the corner of his mouth, then turned into a white light, and flew towards the distance without looking back. And behind him there was also a white figure following him closely and perseveringly followed. Ouch! After being swallowed by the giant painting, Baichuran found that he had come to another small world, with green mountains and flowing water. The sky was empty, and there was a small village in the mountains which looked very pleasant. He gazed at the surrounding scenery aloud, then took Wise Immortal from his waist and asked, Wise Immortal, do you know what kind of tool is this? Okay. Wise Immortal seemed to be waking up from sleep. Although he has lost his body and soul, thus no longer be able to do things like sleep, but when he's extremely bored he would use this giving up thinking way to relax. It let him enter a state similar to sleep and pass the time. After hearing Baichuran's call, he woke up, the green soul fire in his eye sockets relit, and quickly analyzed the origin of the painting. This magic weapon is called Splashing Ink Immortal Painting. Wise Immortal replied. It's a relic of the immortals from the Enlightened period. Strange, what is the Enlightened period? Is it an era older than the Eastern Qing dynasty? How can the relics of the immortals end up in the demon world and fall into the hands of the demon race? 1 question solved and 3 more questions added. Baichuran closed his eyes and felt it and then said, Very well, the North Demon and the Imperial Army retreated. The Black Snake King and the 4 of them were also captured. Xiangxue is pursuing. Everything is proceeding according to plan. Can you get the remaining 2 maps by this method? Wise Immortal couldn't help asking. At least one can be caught. Baichuran took out the dilapidated map fragment from the storage bag, and he had already marked it on it. Anyway, this is the relic left by the first emperor of the demon race. The demon kings of the North Demon may be able to ignore it, but Prime Minister Yun Kuan must find a way to take it back from me. Moreover, this painting is not just as simple as sealing people into different spaces, right? Yes. Wise Immortal replied. In this painting, various immortal phantoms will constantly be produced to attack the people who enter it. Every immortal phantom has the strength of an earth immortal. The level of those phantoms is that high. Baichuran blinked. The owner of this painting is not a normal immortal, right? Yes, the information sent back to me by Great Wisdom said that the original owner of this painting was a venerable immortal. Wise Immortal's voice was a little confused. Venerable immortal is the level above the earth immortal, which is only available in the immortal realm. Maybe. Baichuran took steps. Look, I only need to lure the ink-splashing immortal to attack me, and then I pretend to be defeated and be besieged and severely injured and unconscious. Isn't this a great script? It's great, but how do you know the degree? Wise Immortal replied. You are the biggest threat of the demon race, they will not believe it if you act too fake. Prime Minister Yun Kun easily made it his own, then checked the content. Ignoring the spirit stones, spare clothes, a few jars of fairy wine and a lot of iron swords, he took out the map fragments that Bai Qiran had placed in the innermost area, and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Is there anything good in it? Seeing Prime Minister Yun Kun's actions, several demon kings gathered around and asked. Prime Minister Yun Kun didn't answer, but just showed the storage bag in his hand, and the sole awareness of several demon kings scanned it at the same time, and then all revealed a disappointed look. Why are you so poor? The Dragon King sighed. Except for these piles of spirit stones, these jars of wine, and a large piece of unprocessed jade, what are the other things? What about magic weapons? What about secret techniques? What does this pile of iron swords mean? He is the pillar of the human race anyway. Perhaps he simply can't use it at all. The White Bear King took out a few jars of fairy wine from the storage bag. Come on guys, let's go back to a dinner party tonight and use the wine of this sword patriarch. Well, I think that today's Royal Highness who can't fight at all is about to lose. After the White Fox King captures her, let's have a banquet together again. Seeing several demon kings talking and laughing, Prime Minister Yun Kun asked. Everyone, what should we do to Sword Patriarch now? Sword Patriarch's body is hard to be injured, so now we can't kill him under this condition. The White Bear King pondered and said. First put him in the dungeon, wait until we're back to the imperial capital, and then refine him with the large melting pot in the imperial capital. Prime Minister Yun Kun hesitated for a moment, feeling something wrong. Yun Funga believes that it is safer to put him in the splashing ink immortal painting. I think so too. The White Bear King sneered and said. But does Prime Minister Yun think that this ancient immortal treasure is so easy to control? What does the White Bear King mean? In order to drive it, I made a deal with the spirit of it, supplemented it with a whole spiritual energy vein, and offered hundreds of loyal soldiers as blood sacrifices. Only then can I barely drive it to fight for me. In order to exhaust the Sword Patriarch, this spirit has already exhausted its own energy. If you want to use it again, you need to replenish it. Where can I find a spirit vein and hundreds of blood sacrifices now? The White Bear King was rather helpless. All right. Prime Minister Yun Kun sighed. I'll go and store the fragments of the map first. White Bear King, what about your copy? It's on me, what's up? The White Bear King replied subconsciously. I won't give it to you now. When the battle is over and the waste is cleaned up, we will open the first Demon Emperor mausoleum together and compete together. Whoever wins will become the Demon Emperor. Ugh. Prime Minister Yun Kun sighed. I'd better put away the fragments of this map first. He turned and left, and the White Bear King also took a few Demon Kings and walked out with a smile. Several guards walked in, framed by Chiron, who was lying on the ground, and walked towards the dungeon. For the demon race, everything seemed to be developing in a good situation, but none of them noticed that Bai Qiran, who should be limp and unconscious, moved his ears slightly when he was lifted out of the door by the guards. The flames in the brazier flickered, and the dim firelight dispelled the surrounding darkness, bringing a little brightness. In the dungeon, a one-armed tiger demon who looked like a general was commanding several other demons who were using hands and feet to carry the unconscious Bai Qiran into a cell at the bottom of the dungeon. Oh, wait a minute. Just when several demons held Bai Qiran up and prepared to handcuff him with shackles in the dungeon, the one-armed tiger demon suddenly stopped them. Handcuff him upside down. The tiger demon walked to the brazier aside, reached out, and picked up a bright red soldering iron from inside. Could it be? Several demons glanced at each other and then hesitantly said, General, isn't it okay? The king hasn't even ordered us to hurt him. But the king also never said that we can't do anything against him. The one-armed tiger demon looked at the hot red soldering iron. His face was full of revenge pleasure. He raised his only arm and said, Did you see it? Just because of a sword beam of this damn dead Sword Patriarch, I lost my arm and almost lost my life. Now that he finally fell into my hands, let me imprint him with several slave brands. But stand aside. If you dare not do it, don't get in my way. Seeing his demon subordinates still hesitating, he blasted them out impatiently. After closing the cell door, the tiger demon used his own arm to handcuff Bai Qiran carefully. Looking at Bai Qiran, a grinning smile appeared on his face, then he walked away, got to the brazier, and picked up the soldering iron. What is this? Someone asked behind him. Huh, don't you understand? This is a punishment we North Demon gave to war slaves. Once marked by this iron, it would be equivalent to revealing his status as a slave in the North Demon. No matter what he does in the future, this mark of humiliation can't be taken off. The Tiger Demon in a good mood subconsciously held up the soldering iron, bragging about it, and then he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. Turning his head, a white-haired young man who had already woken up and broke free from the shackles, stood beside him with a smile. Save. Before the Tiger Demon could scream, Baichuran pointed it out, piercing his vocal cords directly, and strangling the Tiger Demon's call for help in his throat. He kicked it to the ground, then raised the soldering iron in the brazier and said with a smile, "Since you like this brand so much, I'll help you. Let's brand you a couple." Then, in the dark and cold dungeon room, there was a terror scream like someone was burning alive. A few minutes later, Baichuran walked out of the dungeon with ease, closed the door with his backhand. The one-armed Tiger Demon General was lying on the ground with a buttock full of brands. Wise Immortal, who was hung around his waist, couldn't help but say, "Who told the Demon Kings of the West Demon Realm before that human cultivators pay attention to cultivating their hearts and will not easily break out?" "It's me," Baichuran admitted shamelessly. "But what I'm talking about is the cultivator with a high level in the human race. Is my cultivation level very high?" Wise Immortal was speechless. For Baichuran's special situation, if you wanted to say whether his cultivation level was high or not, it's really subtle. My soul awareness has locked the White Bear King and Prime Minister Yun Kuan. Let's get the remaining map fragments and end this matter here. Baichuran said. As long as the map fragment appears in your field of vision, you can see it, right? Wise Immortal replied. Yes, I can tell at a glance whether it is the real thing or not. Okay, let's go. All the way out of the dungeon, all the monsters who witnessed Baichuran along the way were stunned by him before they made a sound. The hall of the city lord's mansion, where the singing and dancing were once peaceful, has become a ruin. Under the scorching, inextinguishable fire, even the stones that constitute the main hall of the city's mansion have softened and melted into a strange shape on the ground. Several scorched corpses lie crookedly in the ruins. Under the action of the sudden high temperature, they still maintain the posture before death, but with a light touch, they would turn into the finest ashes and dissipate. These scorched corpses also included 2 demon kings, Flying Tiger King and Kuei Bull King. After the goal was achieved, Baichuran had no need to hold back. Both demon kings were in a state of serious injuries, thus they couldn't escape their demise. However, under Baichuran's deliberate control, the White Bear King did not die. At the moment the fireball exploded, the shock wave knocked him out. The high temperature caused severe burns to most of his body, but for a demon king, it's not an injury that could not be recovered. Stepping on the ashes on the ground, Baichuran crossed the ruins, grabbed the White Bear King by the neck, and lifted him from the pile of building fragments. Where is the map fragment of the first ancestor demon emperor? Baichuran asked. Pooh. The White Bear King barely spit out bloody saliva at Baichuran, but the latter was prepared for it and just leaned his head sideways to dodge. Well, I'm actually just trying. Never mind, I can find it by myself. Baichuran threw the White Bear King to the ground, and then took out the Wise Immortal hanging on his waist and faced the White Bear King. On his thumb, that ring is a storage tool. After watching for a while, Wise Immortal spouted green sparks in his eyes and said, Are you a living thing? The White Bear King fell to the ground and asked in astonishment. However, neither Baichuran nor Wise Immortal paid any attention to him. The former stepped forward and easily grabbed the ring from the weak White Bear King, broke the prohibition above, and then took out the map fragments inside. After collecting the map fragments, he put the storage ring back on the White Bear King's thumb, patted the latter's face and said, Look, I only take the fragments of the map. I won't mess around with other people's storage rings. This is the human's manner. Bye-bye, you can lie down here. Why didn't you kill me? The White Bear King panted and asked. Why? Baichuran thought for a while and smiled. Of course it's because you're still useful. Big Bear, you still need to fight for racial equality in the demon world. Leaving behind the White Bear King, Baichuran's soul awareness locked onto Prime Minister Yun Kuan and traced it all the way. He was also not afraid of the severely injured and dying White Bear King would be tapped by the Ape King and the Dragon King. Judging from the scan results, the 2 demon kings and the new demon emperor were not in the city at present, and not to mention it. White Fox King was still outside the city. Even Su Xiangxue would not watch the White Bear King, who was the rebel leader, being killed by the demon emperor faction. As for Prime Minister Yun Kuan, this guy was more cunning than the White Bear King. He was currently carrying the map fragments and rushing with all his strength, and has quietly gone to the wilderness hundreds of miles away from this city. Baichuran followed him all the way through the forest, over the mountains, dived into the canyon and deep into the cave. Finally, in the depths of the cave, Prime Minister Yun Kuan jumped into an underground lake. Baichuran followed the Prime Minister to dive to the bottom of this lake, which was hundreds of meters deep, and entered an underground river from the bottom cave. After hundreds of meters, he emerged from another underground lake. Prime Minister Kuan finally stopped. Baichuran stretched out his hand and grabbed it, and the cyan jade pendant in the boy's hand was taken by him. He looked at it and then asked, "Where did you get this jade pendant?" The boy looked at Prime Minister Yun Kuan on the side and did not answer. "I understand it was, cannot be said, too, right?" Baichuran put away the jade pendant and said lightly, "But this jade pendant can only trade for one life. What about your own?" "This jade pendant is his, not mine." Prime Minister Yun Kuan got up from the ground and said while touching his throat, "Enough, Prime Minister Yun Kuan, this time you will listen to me." The young man smiled bitterly. "Compared to me, the demon realm needs you more. More importantly, I don't think the Lord Sword Patriarch will kill me, do you?" "Oh, where do you come from being confident that I will not kill you?" Baichuran tilted his head. "Don't tell me it's because of your blood relationship with Su Xiangxue. You should know she doesn't care, thus I won't care either." "Of course I don't place my hopes on the blood of the Demon Emperor. I don't care myself, let alone my half-human and half-demon sister." The boy settled down. Baichuran could see that he was a little nervous, but he still mustered up the courage to say, "I don't think you will kill me, it's because if I'm alive, it's more useful to you or to the human race, isn't it?" Baichuran looked at him without speaking. "When the Ape King and Dragon King found me and we returned to the City Lord's mansion together, I found that you did not kill the White Bear King, but sat and watched him being taken away by the White Fox King. You are not just looking for the map to the Imperial Mausoleum of the first Demon Emperor. What you want is a demon world where the two sides are opposed, with heavy losses and unresolved conflicts." The boy paused and continued. "Therefore you need the White Bear King to live, and let him live as the leader of the North Demon and the spiritual banner of the vast middle and low-level demons. At the same time, you also need me, the Demon Emperor who inherited the royal blood of the Demon Emperor, to live as the leader of high-level demons who oppose the White Bear King. The class gap determined by the bloodline, unless violent means are used, otherwise there is no way to solve it in a short time. Basically, in these few civil wars, you manage to consume most of the demon realm's warfare ability. In the next time, the demon race has to survive this period of pain, and there is absolutely no way to produce a decent threat against 9 provinces and 10 lands." "Did you guess this by yourself?" Baichuran was silent for a while and suddenly asked. "No, I don't have this ability yet." Song Huangyu arched his hands. "It's just a combination of the plan left by Prime Minister Yun Qin and the various actions of the princess sister." "Well, what's your name?" "I'm Song Huangyu." "Song Huangyu, right?" Baichuran raised his hand and said, "You exchanged your jade pendant for the life of Prime Minister Yun Kuan, and used this rhetoric to save your life. Then what are you going to use to save the lives of the 2 demon kings outside? You know, if there is a smart advisor like Yun Kuan on your side, coupled with the monkey outside and your dragon cousin, the power comparison between you and the White Bear King becomes unbalanced. This is the last map fragment, which will be kept and passed down by the royal family for generations." Song Huangyu groped out a fragment of a map from his arms, and came to Baichuran with both hands. "Song Huangyu is willing to use this map fragment to exchange the life of my teacher and Uncle Long from Sword Patriarch." Baichuran raised Wise Immortal's head and identified this map fragment. In a short period of time, let alone attacking the 9 provinces and 10 lands, with just this military strength, it might even be difficult to smooth out the chaos in the demon world. Baichuran's whereabouts were not concealed. Su Xiangxue, who was receiving the prisoners of war, quickly saw him, dropped the prisoners of war and walked towards him with a smile. "You're back." When Baichuran nodded, Su Xiangxue saw Song Huangyu and Prime Minister Yun Kuan behind him, so the smile on her face narrowed down, and she took Baichuran's arm to the side and asked in a low voice, "Why didn't you kill that Yun Kuan?" "Because of this thing." Baichuran raised the cyan jade pendant in his hand. Su Xiangxue looked at this jade pendant with some familiarity. After thinking about it carefully, she stunned. "The mark on this, isn't this from your Qingming sword sect?" Yes, in the Qingming sword sect, when accepting a disciple, the master will have to personally carve a jade pendant for him or her. This jade pendant symbolizes the disciple's identity and position in the sect, and is also in line with some of the sect's services. Bai Qiran explained. But more importantly, this jade pendant symbolizes the master's message and blessings to his disciples. At the very beginning, the jade pendant of the Qingming sword sect was not a representative of identity. My master Qingming Taoist began this tradition. He also carved a piece of jade pendant for me. Bai Qiran said, took out his jade pendant from the storage bag and said, the functions above are all added later. At the very beginning it was just a piece of jade pendant. The word Heng eternal was given to me by master, which means that I should not stop practicing and persevere, until one day I will break through to a higher level. This kind of jade pendant was the tradition of the Qingming sword sect that has continued for 3,000 years. Even Tang Ruowei had one. As Bai Qiran's disciple, Tang Ruowei's jade pendant was carved for her by Bai Qiran himself, and Bai Qiran bestowed it on her. Her word is Jian hard. Although Bai Qiran explained to her that he wanted her to work hard in her cultivation, in fact Bai Qiran only subconsciously thought of her hard chest at the time. This jade pendant, the technique used in carving, is the most standard carving technique of the Qingming sword sect. Bai Qiran looked at the jade pendant held in her hand by Su Xiangxue, and said, based on the reactions of Prime Minister Yun Kuan and your half-brother, I guess that this jade pendant is also from the Fusang Shrine of Dongying. However, the problem is that I have basically counted the whereabouts of the disciples of Qingming sword sect for more than 3,000 years. In my memory, there is no Qingming disciple ever going to Dongying, and there are not even many people going to the sea. So the question is, who does this jade pendant belong to? The jade pendant in Su Xiangshue's hand had the word Li stand written on it, and he didn't know what it meant. Anyway, after I find the method to build a foundation, I must go and take a look at this Fusang shrine. Bai Qiran put away the jade pendant from Su Xiangshue's hands. Take care of the business right now. Su Xiangxue began to lead people to subdue the prisoners here, while Bai Qiran took a few people down to the dungeon and found the Black Snake King and 3 others who were locked in the dungeon by the White Bear King. They were not Bai Qiran, therefore when confronting the ink-splashing immortal, they were beaten into a state of being unable to recover. Now these 4 demon kings were shackled and hung side by side on a wall, still in a coma. Bai Qiran let people splash them with cold water, and several demon kings woke up with a groan. They saw Bai Qiran in front of them in the blur, and they were immediately scared sober. They were surprised at first, then beaming with joy on their faces and asked, Sword Patriarch, did you get out? Yes. Bai Qiran smiled and nodded. Wake up, the civil war is over. What? The Black Snake King struggled and asked. How is the result? There is good news and bad news, which one do you want to hear first? Bai Qiran asked back. The 4 demon kings were obviously a little nervous. After thinking for a while, the Black Snake King hesitated and said, Then tell me the good news first. Well, the good news is that Xiangxue took the people from the West Demon Realm and won, and the Northern Demon Realm and the Emperor have already surrendered. Bai Qiran nodded and said, What? Did we win? The 4 demon kings were overjoyed, and then Cao asked carefully, So the bad news? Well, Xiangxue hasn't learned about warfare, so she emptied all of your troops. Bai Qiran's face was full of apologies. Now there are only 24 people left, sorry? The White Bear King and the White Fox King fled back to the northern area of the demon world. Song Huangyu led the demon kings to surrender. Looking at the demon world, there was no opponent that could oppose Su Xiangxue. It could be said that the demon world was now regarded as being defeated by Su Xiangxue. The unity achieved the desired result planned by the Black Snake King and others. But at the same time, the power of the West Demon had been exhausted by Su Xiangshue's design. The Black Snake King had a good plan to attract Bai Qiran to participate in the demon race's civil war. There was really no force in the demon realm that could stop him. But he miscalculated one thing. The map of the first demon emperor's mausoleum was indeed very important to Bai Qiran, but it did not mean that Bai Qiran would completely ignore the benefit of the human race because of the map. A unified demon race that has completely lost the concept of descent and hierarchy was definitely big trouble for the human in the 9 provinces and 10 lands. The sacred dynasty back then was because of a unified and powerful immortal dynasty, so the demon world was defeated, and dared not make any more ideas. But according to Wise Immortal, the sacred dynasty at that time also paid a considerable price. Nowadays, the human race just came out of the war between humans and demons and took the first step towards rejuvenation. Although the total number of demons was far less than the human, all the demons could transform, which meant even the weakest one was comparable to a foundation establishment stage cultivator. After hundreds of thousands of years of development, their fighting power would definitely be more than that of the human race. The Black Snake King faced Baichuran's direction and bowed down. This little king respectfully wishes Her Majesty Xiangxue to suppress the rebellion and to conquer my demon world. Long live the Empress. Why do you bow to me? Baichuran staggered slightly and said. The one you should bow to is outside now. This little king just heard the good news and was overjoyed for a while. The Black Snake King smirked, his face full of flattery. You sure can turn your face very fast. Baichuran glanced at them and walked out of the cell. Don't stay here, go out first. After seeing him go out, the other 3 demon kings hurriedly came to the Black Snake King, and the White Crocodile King asked angrily. Black Snake King, are you willing to hand over the fruits of victory so easily? How many brothers died for that position? White Crocodile King, do you know how I got from an illegitimate son of a prince to where I am now? The Black Snake King pointed to his face and said. It's shameless. Only people who know the current affairs and be shameless live long. 10 days later, Su Xiangxue, who led her army to the imperial capital of the demon realm, held the enthronement ceremony in the imperial capital as scheduled. Under the coercion of a certain man, each demon king sent envoys or participated in the ceremony in person. They all expressed their surrender to the new demon empress Su Xiangxue. Then, the newly appointed demon empress, representing the demon world, signed a series of restrictive clauses with the leaders of the Righteous Alliance and the Evil Alliance in 9 provinces and 10 lands and spent another 3 months to fine-tune the domestic situation so that the opposition between the Demon Emperor Court and the 28 counties of the Northern Demon became clearer. At the same time, according to the patchwork map, Su Xiangxue's people successfully found the specific location of the mausoleum of the first Demon Emperor. After doing these 3 things, she announced her abdication in the imperial capital and gave the throne to her half-brother Tsang Huangyu. You have been in power for 3 months and all 3 major things you have done are traitorous. Your reputation in the demon world may be stinking for thousands of years. On a flatboat in the ocean, Baichuran joked with Su Xiangxue. The 2 of them are on the way to the location of the first demon emperor's mausoleum. I don't care about them. Su Xiangxue smiled indifferently. I am the joint elder of the Evil Alliance, the leader of the Kamasutra sect, but not the Northland Princess and the Empress of the Demon Realm. So carefree. Baichuran paused for a moment, then said sincerely. Xiangxue, thank you. Su Xiangxue's face turned red, but she was immediately suppressed by her luck, and then she asked. Thank me for what? Thank you for this trip to the Demon Realm for me and thank you for all the things you have done for me since these days. Baichuran touched his nose with some embarrassment and continued on. Humph, I'm glad you know it. Su Xiangxue answered. Baichuran walked 2 steps forward and continued to drive the boat forward with infuriating energy. Su Xiangxue approached quietly from behind and stretched out her hand towards Baichuran's drooping palm, but finally hesitated for a while and still grabbed him. The small boat was swaying in the waves, breaking through the waves and then advanced dozens of nautical miles. Wise Immortal, who was hung around his waist, finally couldn't help asking. Well, I can talk now, right? Su Xiangxue raised her eyebrows and glanced at Wise Immortal with a murderous look, while Baichuran said without looking back. Yes, what do you want to say? Oh heaven, I can finally talk. Watching you 2 flirting is really suffocating me. Wise Immortal beeped. Why did the first Demon Emperor want to bury himself on an island in the sea instead of being buried in the demon world? What kind of calculation does it make? What does the prophecy circulated in the demon royal family mean? I feel like my thirst for knowledge has begun to boil. After being quiet for a long time, all you can talk is such nonsense. Su Xiangxue said angrily. Then what? Can't I vent my emotions? Shut up. Wise Immortal closed his mouth sadly, but the atmosphere between Baichuran and Su Xiangxue had been completely destroyed by him. During the next journey, Su Xiangxue never felt that charming atmosphere again. I have to find an excuse to dismiss this skull in the future. Su Xiangxue thought secretly in her heart. According to the results shown on the map, the tomb of the first Demon Emperor was on an isolated island southeast of Tsang Sea, several hundred miles away from the coast of the Demon Realm. Although it's not very far, traveling through this distance was still dangerous. Along the way, Baichiran has killed several powerful sea beasts. Among them, there was even one dragon horse with some dragon characteristics, and its strength was comparable to that of a cultivator in the deity transformation stage. These sea beasts were only a drop in the vast expanse of the sea, and the small territory that they have divided and occupied for dozens of miles was nothing at all. In the depths of the sea, there were more fierce and powerful monsters, some of which could even swallow real immortals. Fortunately, Baichiran did not need to face these guys. The tomb of the first demon emperor was considered offshore. For some reason, there were no strong sea beasts around. The small boat crossed the sea and finally reached its destination. It was an island with a huge area that was covered with dense forests. In the center of the island there was a mountain about several hundred meters high. There was the location of the mausoleum of the first demon emperor recorded on the map. After slaying the two monsters on the shore, which may be guardian beasts, Baichiran leaned on the shore in a small boat and boarded the island with Su Xiangxue. The climate on the island was pleasant, and Su Xiangxue stretched out her beautiful body and took a deep breath. It's really a pity that such a great place is used as a tomb for the demon emperor. She sighed. Soon it won't be his tomb anymore. Baichiran gave a thumbs up and said, "If you can't get used to it, just come and dig his grave together." Yes. Su Xiangxue pushed Baichiran and said, "Let's go, it's all here, don't be lazy." Half an hour after the two walked towards the mausoleum, another ship followed their course and leaned on the island. This ship was several times larger than the ship Baichiran and Su Xiangxue were riding in. It was attached with steel and looked very solid. The hull was also engraved with some formations. After the ship stopped, a group of people descended from the ship one by one. The three ones who were most ahead were the White Crocodile King, the Eagle King, and the Flower King. After the position of the Demon Emperor was taken away by Su Xiangxue, she abandoned it like a broken shoe and threw it to Zhang Huangyu. This made them very annoyed, but they also understood that, let alone Baichiran, even Su Xiangxue was not someone they could deal with. So they chose to gamble, following behind Baichiran, betting everything on the prophecy left by the first Demon Emperor. It seems that they have already entered before us. After landing, they found that there were no people near the beach, and the Eagle King said to Flower King, "Flower King, leave it to you." Flower King nodded, her hands turned into a large number of vines, dug directly into the ground. Only in this way could they bypass Baichiran and Su Xiangxue, who were walking the normal way, and arrive at the tomb of the first Demon Emperor first. It's a pity that Black Snake King didn't come. Watching Flower King's figure gradually sank into the ground, Eagle King sighed. He is good at earth digging and earth escape technique, and he is sensitive. With him we will get twice the result with half the effort. Don't mention that spineless trash. The White Crocodile King coldly snorted. He has betrayed us, he is no longer the leader of our West Demon. Eagle King touched his head in embarrassment without saying a word. At this moment, Flower King's head emerged from the hole and said to everyone, "I have probably found the location of the main tomb. Come with me." The mausoleum of the first Demon Emperor was vast inside. It's not only inside the mountain range but also the entire island. The main tomb where the coffin of the first Demon Emperor rested was on the center of this island. The three Demon Kings and a group of loyal demons followed Flower King all the way down, dug into the tomb of the first Demon Emperor from the rock under the island. The vine broke through a rock layer and then penetrated into it. After perceiving the inner space for a moment, the vine spread out and gave way. Go, there are no traps or formations inside. Flower King stepped into it first, then the White Crocodile King and the Eagle King hurriedly followed her. After entering the inner space, the Eagle King snapped his fingers and polished a ball of sparks at his fingertips. The light shone, and the group found that they had arrived in the main tomb of the first Demon Emperor's mausoleum. The space inside the tomb was vast and quiet. It's simply an underground palace. Look there. The White Crocodile King swept his gaze around, and suddenly pointed to a place deep in the darkness and said. The Eagle King flung the flame at his fingertips to that direction, and the light illuminated things in the dark. It was a giant coffin that was hung in the air with several large chains, covered with talismans. Everyone held their breath. Dash. On the other side, Baichiran and Su Xiangxue also succeeded in finding the entrance of the tomb based on the map. They followed the dark stairs of the tomb all the way down, and after reaching the bottom floor, they found that the one that appeared in front of them was spacious enough to allow two horse-drawn carriages ran side by side. After another 10 meters, mottled murals began to appear on both sides of the passage. An unknown period of time has passed, thus although the murals on the passage walls use some special paint, the content have long been unreadable. Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue watched them with illumination for a while, but they couldn't figure it out. What is painted on the wall? Let me have a look. Wise Immortal took the initiative to invite Ying, and Bai Qiran picked him up and faced the mural. Look at hair thread Chinese text net. After watching for a while, Wise Immortal said, "This mural is about the era of gods. The gods are high in the sky and rule everything in the world. Among them, it seems that there are figures of humans and demons. There should be a follow-up." Upon hearing this, Bai Qiran walked a distance forward with Su Xiangxue, and then found a second mural on the wall. Wise Immortal continued to scan with his great wisdom ability, and then said, "What this mural says is that one of the humans accidentally discovered a way to condense the energy hidden in the human body into true qi and cultivate into immortals. He taught this method to other humans, letting humans and demons acquired power and gradually became prosperous." Bai Qiran carried Wise Immortal forward and found the third mural. This painting shows that the human race and the demon race united, rebelled against the gods and overthrew the rule of the gods. Bai Qiran continued to move forward. This time he had seen the end of the corridor, and on the side wall at the end of the corridor, there was a fourth mural. This painting shows that after the gods were overthrown, the human race and the demon race started a war. After scanning, Wise Immortal said, "It seems that the demon race has lost that battle. Otherwise, the first demon emperor will not die, and there is no need to use great magical powers to isolate the demon realm from the 9 provinces and 10 lands. So lousy." Bai Qiran scratched the back of his head. "Speaking of which, has the demon race ever defeated the human race in history? I don't know. Anyway, in all the battles I know, the demon race has lost." Wise Immortal replied. "What happened?" Su Xiangxue steadied her body and said in surprise, "We didn't trigger any booby trap, did we? It's not us. Someone arrived here first." Bai Qian's soul awareness penetrated into the underground palace opposite, swept around and quickly found the culprit. The Flower King and Eagle King panicked, fleeing from the bottom of the underground palace with a group of demons. Behind them, a giant figure was chasing. Someone came first, but with the strength of your soul awareness, you didn't even notice it?" Su Xiangxue said in surprise. "What's so strange about this?" Wise Immortal yelled. "You two were absent-minded when coming here. I think even if a boat is walking side by side with you, you may not be able to notice them." Su Xiangxue's face turned red, while Bai Qiran murmured, "What is that? Dragon?" In his soul awareness scanning, an extremely large monster like a dark golden dragon was continuously stretching out its limbs from the lowest space of the underground palace, chasing after the demon. Its speed was extremely fast, and every few seconds, it would swallow a demon in the team. Bai Qiran saw that the speed of Flower King and Eagle King was completely inferior to this monster. The two of them were able to survive until now, purely because they ran faster than the people they brought with them. By continuously abandoning their men, Flower King and Eagle King managed to run to the top of the underground palace. This time, not only Bai Qiran, but also Su Xiangxue witnessed 2 demon kings running out of the underground palace entrance. After seeing the bridge, joy appeared on the faces of the 2 demon kings, but when they had just stepped on the bridge, a giant dragon came out from the darkness. It bit and swallowed the 2 along with part of the bridge. After the dark golden dragon swallowed the 2 demon kings, it slowly raised its head, and the cold and merciless eyes locked on Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue who were standing at the end of the bridge. Immediately, accompanied by the sound of rumbling earth and rock collapse, more dragon heads poked their heads out of the abyss and stared at the 2 people at the bridge with hungry eyes. Its body wrapped around on the underground palace, or climbed on the rock wall. According to Bai Qiran's count, there were 9 dragon heads in total. An extremely terrifying sense of coercion came, and the suppression from the bloodline made Su Xiangxue's breathing start to become unsatisfactory. She froze in place, sweating all over her body. Seeing this, Bai Qiran hurriedly stood in front of her, tanked the pressure. "What kind of monster is this?" Bai Qiran asked. 9-headed ancestral dragon. This is the first demon emperor." Wise Immortal's voice was full of tension. "Be careful, old Bai. He used a secret method to refine his corpse into a zombie-like existence before death, retaining almost all of its strength before death. And it's very hungry now." "How strong is it?" "Very high." Wise Immortal replied. practically the level of the immortal emperor. Baichiron didn't say a word. Like wise immortal, he was a smear of the realm above the fairy, but just listening to the name of this realm, you can know that this is not a realm that can be reached by any fairy. Be careful. It's coming. Following wise immortal's warning, the first demon emperor who came out of the underground palace finally couldn't restrain his hunger. All 9 heads opened their mouths like an abyss and gnawed towards Baichiron and Su Xiangxue. Baichiron grabbed Su Xiangxue's hand and pulled her back. At the same time he raised his palm and made a huge palm print. Boom. The palm print flew out, hitting a head of the first ancestor demon emperor on the rock wall at once, knocking out a large crack, and gurgling seawater poured into this space from the crack. The strong wind set off huge waves, and the thunder fell from the gaps in the clouds, hit the sea and set off huge waves. The entire coastal area of the demon realm has all turned into such typhoon weather. The dragon has the ability to handle wind and rain. This scene was probably just a natural phenomenon caused by the presence of the first demon emperor. After transforming into a zombie, this 9-headed dragon's control of its own abilities obviously has reduced, so it's very normal that something was overflowed. Amidst the turbulent waves, Baichiron finally found the position of the first demon emperor. The huge dark golden 9-headed ancestral dragon relaxed his body, and 9 dragon heads connected to its dark golden body that was as large as a hill. Behind it, there is a pair of wings that cover the sky and the sun, slowly stretching. In the vicinity of the demon emperor, there were still a few residual limbs and flesh and blood left by the sea beasts. In the eyes of the first demon emperor, these powerful sea beasts were nothing but moving food. There was also the purest breath of death from the underworld, which not even the strongest soul raker be able to use. After the black wind blew, Baichiron's clothes became tattered, his headband was also corroded, and his white hair spread out. He asked, "Wise immortal, is there any way to counter this trick? If the energy level is above the immortal emperor level, you can try to seize control from him. At that time, it is purely to compete with each other for the depth of their foundations." Wise immortal replied quickly, "But it's a pity that you have enough energy but without true chi, thus you can't use this method. I think you should just use your brute force to break the skill. Do what you want." It's the matter of true chi again? I'm so envious. At this time the oppression of the first demon emperor also passed. Baichiron twisted his neck and said, "I just need to what I want, right?" "Yes." "Well then." Baichiron stood on the sea holding his face. Perceiving the energy response on his body to fluctuate rapidly like a tide, Su Xiangxue asked curiously, "What are you doing?" "I'm trying to mobilize the maximum amount of chi that can be used under the suppressed condition. I don't want to break through yet." Baichiron explained bitterly, "This first demon emperor is worthy of its name. It is so powerful that it almost forced me to make a breakthrough in order to fight against it." "You're the scary one." Su Xiangxue couldn't help saying. "Okay, I almost feel it." Baichiron's energy reaction gradually stabilized, and then he drew out the iron sword, twisted his wrist, and walked towards the first demon emperor. 9-headed dragon die. Roar. Although the former was just walking at will and didn't even have a right posture, the first demon emperor, who had only the fighting instinct left, felt an unprecedented sense of threat for no reason. It did not hesitate to mobilize the authority of heaven and earth, and the surrounding space was once again condensed into a nearly substantive pressure, firmly resisting Baichiron. But this time Baichiron's arm trembled and lifted up. With his movements, the surrounding space began to be overwhelmed and distorted and broken, and small spatial cracks began to form, and then condense together. "I probably understand this feeling." Baichiron raised his leg. "This trick is useless to me. See the sword move." With a slamming footstep on the surface of the sea, a huge hole suddenly appeared in the sea, and the sea exploded in all directions. Amidst the waves, Baichiron's sword blade silently stuck to the huge body of the first demon emperor and cut to the root where the 9 dragon heads connected. The airflow between the sky and the earth seemed to be still for a moment, and then a violent haze appeared. The blazing white sword beam stretched across thousands of miles on the sea. Because they're on the Tsang Sea, Baichiron has no scruples. Among the sword beams, the 9 heads of the first demon emperor were cut off and landed on the surface of the sea. This kind of 9-headed monster basically had the ability to regenerate. Just cutting off one head couldn't kill them, so Baichiron chose to cut them all. The huge waves caused by the sword beam were surging endlessly. In the huge waves, the headless giant body of the first demon emperor floated on the sea like an island. The world gradually returned to normal. The dark clouds dissipated, the huge waves gradually stopped, and the sun, moon and stars began to return to the sky. Baiqiran embraced Su Xiangshua's waist, led her to the huge body of the first demon emperor, and then let go of her. "Hurry up." Wise Immortal shook his head anxiously on Baiqiran's belt and urged. "This body is valuable, refine it. From it, we can definitely make a magic weapon that is unique in the world." When Baiqiran heard what he said, he hurriedly moved his hands and released his qi to gather the heads floating around on the sea and the golden blood. He didn't care about the magic weapon himself, but it was very useful to Su Xiangxue. She was willing to accompany him to the demon realm to find the first demon emperor's tomb. There's no way he wouldn't make some payback. Moreover, with the size of this corpse, it's obvious that after refining, a lot of magic weapons could be forged. When the time came, all of them can be brought back and handed over to those whom they could trust. This would also strengthen the cultivation world in the 9 provinces and 10 lands. "Come on. I'll teach you the method and you can refine whatever you want." After spending some time with Baiqiran, Wise Immortal was also familiar with his abilities, and quickly teach a technique to Baiqiran. This technique was also from the Land Immortal era. It's mainly used to refine materials from living beings and forge high-grade immortal treasures. Of course, it must be activated with true qi or immortal essence. However, the magic formula that Wise Immortal chose was a single attribute and more convenient for modification. Baiqiran fumbled for a while before successfully replacing the required energy of the magic formula with qi. He thought for a moment, and then unfolded a scroll from his storage bag. It was the splashing ink immortal painting that the White Bear King had tried to trap him in. He would definitely not allow this kind of killer weapon to remain in the hands of the White Bear King, so after defeating him, Baiqiran seized the scroll from his hand. Through Wise Immortal's scanning, Baiqiran learned of the structure inside the splashing ink immortal painting, and he added some of the formation structures he obtained from this fairy immortal treasure to the idea of this refining tool. The idea gradually took shape. Baiqiran set up the fire mark and began to refine the equipment. The first thing he refined was a dragon head thunder musical instrument, using a piece of the dragon tendons and 2 dragon heads. This was a magic weapon designed for Su Xiangxue. Although Su Xiangshue's previous musical instrument was also a magic weapon of high quality, it was obviously inferior to this immortal treasure made from the body of an immortal emperor-level demon. According to Baiqiran's idea, after this musical instrument was made, it only needs to gently hook the strings to attract the thunder and the fire, use it to stimulate the sound power, and the dragon's roar would be entrained in the sound wave. The power would be extraordinary. The refining of the dragon head thunder musical instrument was quickly completed. Baiqiran asked Su Xiangxue to try it. The power was as expected. The sky thunder that attracted could blast several miles of waves on the sea. The power of the dragon's roar surging in the sound wave was nearly as extraordinary as the roar of the demon emperor. Then Baiqiran used dragon horns to refine a golden hairpin. Su Xiangxue happily accepted these gifts and then began to take the initiative to raise up the refined materials for Baiqiran. After all, this corpse at her feet was her genuine ancestor. What Su Xiangxue was doing now was to help foreign men dismember her ancestor's corpse and use her ancestor's body to refine the weapon. But it really sounded like what a demonic cultivator would do. With the help of Su Xiangxue, Baiqiran's refining efficiency has improved. He gave Su Xiangxue an iron sword infused with his sword spirit and then asked the sect master to cut the demon king for him according to his instructions. With the assistance of Su Xiangxue, Baiqiran quickly refined another flying sword, a pair of double knives, a long spear, a long knife, a pair of boxing armor, a large bow made from dragon keel and dragon bones, and a few dragon scale armors. After doing this, Baiqiran found that there was still a lot of material left, so he began to try something new. He first pulled the dragon beard and dragon horns to make a pen and then used the feathers on the wings of the demon king to make feather fans and feather cloaks, polished the demon king's claws into fist claws, and refined a bunch of spell orbs with the demon king's eyes. In the end, he even made a back scratcher with one of the demon king's remaining paws, but even so, the demon king's corpse still had a lot of usable things left. The muscles and bones that piled up into a mountain as well as the uncoagulated essence and blood flowing in the blood vessels were all the highest class treasures. The two thought for a while. Baiqiran repeatedly tempered the essence and blood. During the process, a lot of energy was wasted. He tempered the blood that could fill a lake into a small bowl, and finally let Su Xiangxue reluctantly absorb into her purple palace. It is estimated that for the next few thousand years, I won't need to use any other pill. Covering her mouth, Su Xiangshue's complexion was a little ruddy, which was a sign of overcompensation. But there is still such a large amount of meat left here. Bai Qiran was a little bit distressed. You can't let it float like this. Once the demon emperor dies, it is estimated that more powerful sea beasts will appear in the nearby sea. If this meat gets eaten by them, then the demon world will have a lot of trouble. He wanted to weaken the demon world, but he had never thought of destroying the demon race. There was an old saying, he who was born in sorrow would die in peace. If the human race faced no threat, they would also lose the motivation for development. So Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue stood on top of the mountain, looking at each other. Using a storage bag or storage ring to hold this volume was completely whimsical, and it's impossible for two people to solve it all. Just use it to feed magic weapons. At this time, Wise Immortal suggested. Isn't that splashing ink immortal painting running out of energy? It just so happens that you can feed it this essence meat to replenish it. After the energy is charged, it is easy to make the spirit of the painting recognize who is the master with your fist. Good suggestion. Bai Qiran asked. How to feed? I'll teach you the method. Wise Immortal said. This process may take a while. You set up the protection formation and leave the splashing ink immortal painting here. Let's take advantage of this time to take a look at the things in the underground palace. According to Wise Immortal's command, Bai Qiran successfully completed the arrangement, leaving the painting there, and then took Su Xiangxue and Wise Immortal back to the underground palace that was currently sinking under the sea. The previous stone tablet had been destroyed, but Wise Immortal wrote down the internal structure of the underground palace. Under his guidance, Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue wandered around in the underground palace and successfully found the valuable tombs in the underground palace. In fact, there were not many valuable tombs in this underground palace. The demon race believed in their own body more than magic weapons, so there was no magic weapon in the underground palace. The only valuable place was the tomb where the first demon emperor practiced his exercises. Fortunately, this tomb was located in the corner of the underground palace, so it was not damaged when the first demon emperor awakened. Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue entered this tomb and found that there was only one huge stone stele made of black crystal ore, with some words inscribed on it. The kind of this ore was very tough. Thus, countless years of time have passed without much influence on it, and the text on it was still clear. Bai Qiran carried Wise Immortal over to scan and translate it, and then Wise Immortal said, there are only 2 sets of exercises above. One set is called 9 turns tyrannical technique, which I think the first demon emperor cultivated. The other set of techniques is a method of transformation. Behind these exercises, there is a big shocking secret. What's the big secret? Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue asked in unison. Obviously, neither of them cared very much about the magical skills cultivated by the first demon emperor. The first demon emperor and the first ancestor of the demon race might not be the same demon. Wise Immortal replied directly. Originally, the demon royal family bloodline did not originate from the noble of the divine beast, the 9-headed dragon. He talked about everything recorded on the stone tablet, and Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue finally understood. Just as the human race had an immortal ancestor who created the cultivation method at the beginning and spread it to all living beings, the demon race also had a demon ancestor who created the cultivation method for demons, passing it down to their descendants. Currently, because the demon realm's royal family was of the 9-headed dragon clan, people in the demon realm also generally believed that this mysterious demon ancestor was also the first demon emperor, the person who had unified all of the demon tribes. In the demon world, although lower demons were dissatisfied with the royal family, they still maintained some respect for the first demon emperor. They were equivalent to the god of the demon race. But now, according to the records read by Wise Immortal from the stone tablet, the one who created the cultivation technique of the demon race was a completely different demon. In reality, the first demon emperor was not the first demon in the world to acquire transformation. Before him, there was a demon who achieved that. That was the real demon ancestor. And they weren't a 9-headed dragon at the beginning. They were just a poisonous insect, the kind used to refine goo. Wise Immortal then said. Not to mention back then in the era of God and even in today's era, they are not a strong race. Then how did they become a winged 9-headed dragon? Su Xiangxue asked nervously. She didn't want to believe that she was actually a descendant of some poisonous insect. Through the second technique recorded above, Wise Immortal shook his head and barely turned himself towards the stone tablet. The second technique is called Ascend Dragon Gate. Its effect allows cultivators to improve their bloodline. Each time they break through one level, they can transform and even change races. Although, after countless generations of reproduction, we and the creatures of the gods are very different. There are some things that have been passed down through the blood of generations and recorded in the most basic factors in our bodies. Cultivating this technique can make people unearth these hidden signals and evolve in the direction of our ancestral origin. The first demon emperor was able to cultivate himself into a member of the nine-headed dragon clan through such a technique, plus having swallowed a lot of divine beasts. What an inspirational story, Bai Qiran sighed. Su Xiangxue touched her elbow and said suspiciously, "In the future, will I or my children suddenly grow limbs of poisonous insects or something like that?" "What are you thinking about?" Bai Qiran patted her head. "How can a person grow the limbs of poisonous insects?" "That's right." Su Xiangxue put down her hands, but she still looked a little nervous. All the girls were afraid of insects. Even the high-level cultivators still felt uncomfortable, not to mention that they suddenly learned that their ancestor was actually a poisonous insect. "Actually, you don't need to worry." Seeing her so nervous, Wise Immortal spoke up. "After practicing this technique, the race of the first demon emperor has transformed into a dragon. No matter how the bloodline changes in the future, it will belong to the dragon clan. Your brother didn't become a three-headed insect, did he? If you really don't believe it, why don't you two go back and have a try for babies?" "It makes sense." Su Xiangxue's gaze fell on Bai Qiran, looking quite moved. Bai Qiran coughed and changed the subject abruptly. He asked, "Since there is this kind of technique that could make every member of the demon race become a dragon, why not spread it?" "What a blunt way to change your topic. What nonsense are you spewing?" Wise Immortal replied. "If everyone in the demon realm were a dragon, then how could the first demon emperor have been its ruler? Every ruling requires a lower class." "Ahem, what you said makes sense," Bai Qiran replied absently. Fortunately, Wise Immortal and Su Xiangxue didn't mention the topic of babies again. Su Xiangxue recorded the 2 exercises on the stone tablet, as well as the secret of the first demon emperor. Then Bai Qiran took Wise Immortal, turned around in this tomb and asked, "Anything else? Are there any clues about my heavenly jealous physique breaking through the foundation establishment stage?" "Let me see. Oh, there seems to be something on that wall." Bai Qiran lifted Wise Immortal over, letting the skull scan it, and then. "This was originally a mural," Wise Immortal said, "which recorded scenes of the human race and the demon race defeating the gods. It also contains a line of words. The old sky collapses, the new sky rises, demon and human both take their fate, changing the sky and the earth. What does it mean?" Just as he finished speaking, a crack suddenly appeared on the stone wall in front of him. Golden rays of light shot out from the split, the stone crumbling. Behind it, there was a different wall, made of material similar to the stone tablet. The golden light flowed, gradually forming a big map. "This is a map of the demon realm?" Su Xiangxue was also disturbed by the change. She came to Bai Qiran and watched the golden light on the stone wall with them. "No, it's a map of the entire world," Bai Qiran said solemnly. "You see, here is the demon realm, here is the Tsang Sea, and there is an island on the sea. This should be Fusang. The river on the far west side is the Broken Soul River. And to the west of the Broken Soul River, there's actually such a big piece of land left. On the map, to the west of the Broken Soul River, there was actually a continent in the wild area equal to the 9 provinces and 10 lands plus the wilderness. In other words, Broken Soul River was actually in the middle of the world. The whole world was split in 2. Wait, place names are beginning to appear on it," Wise Immortal said. After the golden light finished sketching the map, the remaining light gathered together and condensed into a string of incomprehensible text everywhere on the map. Finally, on the map, in the depths of the new wilderness even further west, a golden spot was marked. "Let's see, the 9 provinces and 10 lands and the eastern wilderness are one piece. Their name is Human World. The demon realm here is called Demon Realm. The island on the sea is Fusang. The Broken Soul River was not originally called Broken Soul, but instead Heavenly River, and so on. Found it? The golden mark is called the Land of the Gods, where the last god died in battle. Most relics of the gods' era are buried there. I think the clues you're looking for will be there too." Without Bai Qiran's words, Su Xiangxue had already begun to copy the map on the wall. Because it was made of light, the map couldn't be copied directly. But this was not a difficult task for Su Xiangxue, who excelled at music, chess, calligraphy, and drawing. Soon, she used hand-painted methods to meticulously draw the map displayed on the stone wall. After collecting the map, Bai Qiran, Su Xiangxue, and Wise Immortal checked the underground palace again. Except for the underground tomb which contained the coffin of the first demon emperor that connected to another space was a bit interesting, the other things weren't worth noting. There was also the giant head of a white and bodiless crocodile in the crypt. It should have belonged to the White Crocodile King. It seemed that among the 4 demon kings of the Western Demon Realm, only the Black Snake King remained. At present he was the most miserable among the 3 powers of the Demon Realm. He has become a commander without a single soldier. It was thought that he could only shrink in a corner for the rest of his days, and only be a diplomatic demon king. After wandering around for a while, Bai Qiran returned to the tomb where the exercises were stored and then raised his hand, smashing the stone tablet that held the records of the 2 exercises of the first demon emperor's 9 turns tyrannical dragon technique, and ascend dragon gate into powder. I can't leave this to them. Bai Qiran walked to the map, stretched out his hand to touch it, and after hesitating for a moment, put down his palm again. Just forget about this mural. Anyway, even if the demon race sees it, they're currently powerless to explore the land of the gods. It feels a pity to destroy these historical things like this, Wise Immortal suggested. Fine. Bai Qiran then asked Su Xiangxue to collect the records of both exercises as he wanted to bring them back to the human world for translation. He waited until the splashing ink immortal painting that was outside had absorbed the energy of the demon emperor's corpse, collecting the magic weapon and finally leaving with Su Xiangxue, embarking on the journey back. Because of the fierce battle before, the boat that the pair had traveled on, along with the boats of 3 demon kings, were all destroyed in the aftermath of the battle and turned into wooden boards floating on the sea. Even the small island which before had been in the air, raised by the first demon emperor, had sunk to the bottom of the sea after losing the force that had held it float. Losing their vehicle, Bai Qiran had to sit behind Su Xiangxue as they flew back on her magic weapon to the coast of the demon realm. So the leader of the Kamasutra sect happily took out a white feather coat and deliberately changed it to the size just large enough for 2 people to ride in tandem. Bai Qiran sat in the back like riding a motorcycle, hugging her waist. On the road, she repeatedly asked Bai Qiran to hug her tighter. On the way home, she deliberately took the long path. Originally, the first demon emperor's mausoleum was south of the Tsang Sea, and walking straight back to the demon realm would naturally go back to the southern coast. However, Su Xiangxue took Bai Qiran around, ending up on the shore of a city that sat up far north whose port wasn't frozen over with ice. In the end though, probably because of Wise Immortal's intentional or unintentional hint, Bai Qiran didn't say anything, pretending not to notice. Although he didn't quite understand why she had taken this route, Su Xiangxue seemed to be in a good mood. Coupled with the fact that he'd successfully found the place of the gods, he just didn't mention it. Having nothing to do in the demon realm, Bai Qiran and Su Xiangxue returned directly to the 9 provinces and 10 lands. She should be dealing with some businesses now. It's also good for you to go, trust me. So after Tang Ruo's push, Bai Qiran successfully found Su Xiangxue, who was working in the master's study room. Before the trip, she threw all the affairs to her apprentice and then ran with Bai Qiran for a while. After coming back, Yu Meiqiao immediately returned all the affairs in hand to her master. When Bai Qiran found her, Su Xiangxue was dealing with the piles of sect official affairs while mumbling something about the disciples not being filial. What? Are you going back? After hearing Bai Qiran's intention, Su Xiangxue's face was full of reluctance, but she was a general-minded woman, so she didn't hold back her thoughts. Well, then I'm afraid I will have to retreat to practice the external incarnation and ascend Dragon Gate for some time. If you need help with anything you can ask Mei Qiao. Well, thank you very much. Between you and me, there is no need to say thanks, but I wanted to ask you one more thing. Su Xiangxue stopped Bai Qiran who was about to leave and stood up. With her hands behind her back she came to Bai Qiran, getting close to his face. Do you remember when I asked you to agree to 3 requests of mine? She asked. Of course I do. Smelling the delicate fragrance on her body, Bai Qiran stepped back slightly and touched his nose. What? Are you making a request now? Yes. Su Xiangxue nodded and suddenly stretched out her hands. Hug me, she said. Bai Qiran hesitated for a moment, but slowly stretched out his hand and wrapped his arms around Su Xiangxue's waist. The warm fragrance of the body in his arms made him feel something stir in him. This seemed to be the first time in his more than 3,000 years of life that he had actively approached a woman without a killing intent. While feeling emotional, suddenly, a scent of fragrant wind approached, and Su Xiangshua's lips were already lightly printed on his mouth. The old virgin's body instantly stiffened, and Su Xiangxue stiffly wrapped her arms around his shoulders, keeping him there. After a while, the sect master of the Kama Sutra sect retreated slightly, smiled somewhat sullen. She pinched a strand of hair on his temples. "Farewell," she said softly. Tang Ruowei didn't say anything as she knew that Bai Qiran was busy with his breakthrough, so her reaction was mostly that of loneliness. Seeing her like this, Bai Qiran called her over. "Come on, Ruowei, master will show you a treasure." "What's this?" Tang Ruowei leaned in suspiciously, only to find that Bai Qiran pulled out a piece of ruler tape from the storage bag. "This is one of the immortal treasures I refined in the demon world. Don't you like surveying things and map-making? I'll give you this stuff for you to use as you please." Bai Qiran handed the ruler tape to Tang Ruowei, then turned away. While flipping through his bookcase he informed her of its uses. It can be stretched freely and the scale is very precise. Basically, there is no length that it cannot measure. Of course, you can also use it as a weapon. It has sharp corners and can be used as a flexible sword. You have reached the golden core stage, so I prepared new swordsmanship and palm techniques for you to learn. You must work seriously, huh? What are you doing? Tang Ruowei put away the tape that was wrapped around her chest and coughed awkwardly. "It's nothing," she replied. Bai Qiran glanced at her up and down. "It seems," he said grinning, "that you have found its most useful feature. Yes, if you are in a good mood you could also use it to measure your chest. The progress of your creator's body forging technique. Speaking of which, what level have you reached?" 20th layer. Tang Ruowei said bitterly. "I've been stuck for more than a year. Work harder. Remember that you have to reach the 50th layer, and the higher layer you reach, the more difficult it becomes." Bai Qiran handed the book she had taken out to Tang Ruowei. "This time I have some business, so I can't teach you personally. The palm and swordsmanship are all in here, so you can practice it by yourself. If you don't understand, ask the sect leader and the elders. They'll make things clear for you." Just as he ordered, a girl called suddenly from outside Bai Qiran's door. "Is the senior sword patriarch here? Li Jinyao of Heavenly Demon Sect begs to see you." "Miss Li?" Bai Qiran looked at Tang Ruowei. "What's she doing here?" he muttered. "Who knows?" Tang Ruowei turned her head and said, scratching her face. After a moment, Li Jinyao shouted again, perhaps because there was no response from inside. "Is Ruowei inside? This sister has come to you to discuss something important." "Miss Li." Bai Qiran answered. "Ruowei is here, let's come in." Hearing Bai Qiran's response, Li Jinyao quickly ran in. Seeing Bai Qiran, she eagerly greeted him. "Hello, Senior Sword Patriarch, I am very happy to see you." Then she turned her head again and greeted Tang Ruowei. "Sister Ruowei, you are here. Are you looking for something to do with her?" Bai Qiran nodded. "Then this old man won't be here to disturb the girls chatting? I'll go out first." "Wait, Senior Sword Patriarch. You won't get in the way." Li Jinyao stopped him quickly. "These are not important things. Besides, I have something to do with the Senior Sword Patriarch." "Okay, I actually am looking for you too. Wait a minute." As Bai Qiran was talking, he began to look in his storage bag again. "Ms. Li looks very happy today. Is there anything good I need to know about?" he asked. Yes. Li Jinyao nodded and said, for it was such good news, she seemed to be happy to share it with others. "I just broke through the deity transformation stage yesterday, and then I competed with Master and finally beat Master once in blade skills." "Huh? Did Ji Lingyun lose to you?" Bai Qiran asked, stunned. "Yes, she took Grandmaster Huangfu out to drink today, crying and laughing at the wine table. They looked funny." Li Jinyao said very rebellious things with a bright and happy face. "What useless trash. She actually became a wave on the beach much earlier than Zhu Yunzi." Bai Qiran took out a pair of double blades from the storage bag. "Then I will give you this pair of blades. Catch." How could I take something so precious? At this time, Li Jinyao became modest again. Even at a glance, she saw the extraordinariness in the pair of swords in Bai Qiran's hands. Sometimes Bai Qiran really felt that apart from the fact that the disciples of the Heavenly Demon Sect still retained the students beat teachers tradition, they acted less and less like demon cultivators. "Take it, anyway, I was going to give it to whoever had the best blade technique of the Heavenly Demon Sect." Although Huang Fufeng has the highest cultivation level on the blade path currently, with your qualifications, it's only a matter of time before you surpass him. Bai Qiuran continued. This pair of blades, well, forged from the teeth of an ancient monster dragon, so its name is also called Dragon Tooth. His spirit has just been born. You have to treat it well and make it happy. It can help you a lot. I understand. When it was all said and done, Li Jinyao was no longer humble. She nodded, proudly accepting the pair of blades. So what's this matter? Miss Li is coming to see me? Bai Qiuran asked again. Correct. I heard from Sect Master Su that the senior sword patriarch is going to the depths of the wild to find opportunities recently. Jinyao also wants to go with you. Li Jinyao continued, her tone serious. Senior sword patriarch, my combat power can't compare to yours, but I'm quite confident in taking care of your daily needs along the way. I have specialized in the practice of wifely skills, including cooking, sewing, and mending. That won't work. Bai Qiuran resolutely refused. You are the future star of the heavenly demon sect. If anything happens to you, Ji Lingyun and Huang Fufeng won't let me go easily. I don't want to trigger a war between the righteous and demonic cultivators. Don't say that, Li Jinyao insisted. What if I can do what you can't? Then tell me, what can you do that I can't? Bai Qiuran thought to himself, I have passed through many battles in my life, there is no skill that I don't know about. If you can name something, I'll take you along. Master. At this time, Tang Ruowei next to her said quietly, You forgot that Sister Li can fly. Yes, I can fly. Li Jinyao gave Tang Ruowei a grateful look and then nodded, adding hurriedly. In case the place you want to explore is a void and there is no place to stay, then the only way to continue is to let me fly you over. Hearing their answers, Bai Qiuran was speechless. He wanted to explain, but facts speak louder than words. No matter how great his strength is, a cultivator in the qi refining stage couldn't fly. Well, I can take you there. After being silent for a long time, Bai Qiuran finally spoke. Yay! Li Jinyao cheered and hugged Tang Ruowei. But, you have to listen to me. Bai Qiuran said again, Don't mess around and, you have to swear, promise me one condition. But soon her fighting skills were like a rocket's, soaring upwards at a speed visible to the naked eye. It really seemed that lacking control over power didn't happen to her. The same was true for her blademanship. After being handled by her, the pair of blades' motions were jerky at first, but the more she got used to it, the more she could control them freely. In just 4 or 5 days she mastered the blade, and a newly born spirit also became devoted to her and became loyal lackeys. After getting over, Li Jinyao also began to take over the housework in the evenings. Her cooking skills were really not something to brag about, but after Bai Qiuran would finish eating, he felt that it was a rare delicacy in the world, and every night she would prepare sleeping places for 2 people in a regular manner. After a week or two, Bai Qiuran felt as if he was using her. She was almost like a slave. All the while the two would often stop and rest, making the trip take Bai Qiuran and Li Jinyao more than a month before they finally reached the banks of Broken Soul River. Compared to the last time, the appearance of various aquatic beasts had become weirder and weirder. Bai Qiuran even saw monsters with dog heads, duck heads, and white bear heads bobbing up and down in the waves, hunting and killing other aquatic beasts. This river is really getting weird, Bai Qiuran said with emotion. He had stepped onto the back of Li Jinyao's sword as he said this. The two flying over the Broken Soul River. It was the first time that Li Jinyao had seen such a ruthless scene of the strong devouring the weak in the wild. She turned her head from the bloody scene. Senior Sword Patriarch, you said that if they swallow each other like this, what will the last beast evolve into? She couldn't help asking. I don't know, we still know very little about things in the wilderness at present. Bai Qiuran replied. What about Wise Immortal? It's a pity that we didn't work out a reason in our time. Resisting against devils has already occupied all our minds. Wise Immortal rattled from Bai Qiuran's belt. But following you this time, Wise Immortal said, I learned a lot of interesting information through great wisdom. For example, the air that is poisonous to the human race in this wilderness, in my opinion, is actually a kind of residual grievance. And these wild beasts are also related to the master of these grievances. It seems that this time our gains won't be so measly. Bai Qiuran smiled. Li Jinyao drove the flying sword, landing on the other side of the Broken Soul River, and then the two began to walk from the banks. The wave of beasts on the west bank of the Broken Soul River was no longer something Li Jinyao could deal with herself, So now, it became Bai Qiran's duty to clear the way. According to the map, Bai Qiran was leading Li Jinyao towards the land of divine death. The source of these mysterious resentments seemed to be the land of divine death itself. As the two of them ventured deeper, the resenting aura within the wild grew in intensity. The effect was so strong that Li Jinyao, a cultivator in the deity transformation stage, had to use her true qi with all her strength, as she needed to maintain her defenses in order to avoid the aura's corrosion. Eventually, Bai Qiran reluctantly led Li Jinyao to the entrance of the land of divine death, but they stopped there. Because in front of them, on the only way to the land of the gods, a few great devils appeared, stomping back and forth. Wise Immortal said. "All right." Bai Qiran took Li Jinyao into the boat. After untying the twine, he reached out to grab the oars, but Wise Immortal shouted, "Wait, this ship needs true qi to move, so don't touch that, otherwise we may fall into some strange space later." Bai Qiran looked at Li Jinyao, who was opposite of him, and wanted to curse, but after remembering that his hope of breaking through the foundation building was here, he had to hold back forcibly and handed the oar to Li Jinyao. Li Jinyao seemed very happy to be able to help him. She happily took the oars and then paddled the boat, following the direction of the stream towards the valley. "So that's why you let Miss Li run first," Bai Qiran murmured. "In addition to manipulating space, is there a magic weapon for manipulating time in this world? I haven't heard of any spell that can manipulate time. Perhaps the bell has this ability because it once belonged to the Emperor of Heaven." Wise Immortal said quickly. "Think about it slowly afterward. You need to deal with that guy first, it's coming." Above the sky, the Eastern Emperor bell in the palm of the giant god was filled with energy, and the scorch marks on the surface of the bell had gradually peeled off. The ancient bell glowed with a dull golden light, and its volume soared to match the height of the giant god. Then, the starry sky giant held the bronze bell and shook it gently. Clang. Like the bells in the ancient city of Land Immortal, but the power of this Eastern Emperor bell was better than that bell. Unexpectedly, the sound waves visible to the naked eye passed by, created dark space cracks. The cracks spread inch by inch, and the endless energy storm from the outer void mixed with sharp space debris swept in the direction of Bai Qiran. A void storm blew past, and Bai Qiran's clothes were all torn into pieces. Oh shit. His hair was messy in the wind. Fortunately, Miss Li has left first. If she doesn't leave, she won't be able to leave. Wise Immortal asked solemnly. How do you feel? With the move just now, the space of this sky has been shattered into countless sections. I feel a little cool down below me, nothing else. Bai Qiran covered his private parts and replied. By the way, are there any spells that can conjure clothes? I feel awkward without being ashamed. Well? You don't need to say. Bai Qiran waved. Every spell of that kind requires true qi, right? Wise Immortal did not answer, but seeing his attitude, he should have acquiesced. Damn, it's easy to get here, but I have encountered some unlucky things in the end. Bai Qiran twisted his arm, looked at the galaxy giant in the sky and said, Don't be arrogant, today I will tell you that there is a difference between 10% and 10%. Are you not ready to contribute? Wise Immortal persuaded. Forget it, old Bai, making a breakthrough is no big deal. You're the 66,666th layer of Qi refining stage, even if you break through, isn't it just the 66,667th layer? You don't have this shop after you pass this village. In contrast, the giant god is holding the Eastern Emperor bell in his hand. You have to be careful of it. If this battle continues for a long time, no one can predict what it will do with that magic weapon. My suggestion is to do it quickly. It's okay. Bai Qiran took out an iron sword from the storage bag, and the sword energy was injected, and a bright cold light was drawn across the blade. Today I will let these heavenly gods see the unparalleled swordsmanship of my Qingming sword sect. His toes lightly tapped on the floating stone platform left by Li Jinyao, and the stone platform collapsed, while Bai Qiran himself, in a cloud of smoke, rose to the same height as the tip of the giant god's nose at a rapid speed. and then he took a deep breath and merged the long sword in his hand with a sword beam. As the sword beam flew in the starry sky, Baichuran unreservedly released 10% of his chi, swept the last remaining remains of the heavenly places into flying ash. The huge galaxy giant was also affected by this sword beam. The body was torn apart and one piece was torn apart. Although it possessed a power that surpassed Baichuran's strength, it was obviously inferior to the original master Baichuran when come to using power efficiently. The helpless galactic giant had to desperately wave the Eastern Emperor's bell, and the ringing of the bells tore the entire sky into the tiniest fragments. Endless void storms filled the entire space, but Baichuran still remained fearless. The sword beam tore through the void storm, and in the sky and the ground lots of lotus blossoms bloomed, and in the center of the lotus blossom, there were countless sword energy storms shooting out. For a time, in all directions, the entire giant body of the galaxy giant god was surrounded by sword beams. The endless sword aura tore the limbs of the galaxy giant, and even its neck was torn apart by more than half, but this kind of injury was still not fatal to the galaxy giant. Seeing Baichuran's invincible posture, knowing he was no match for this opponent, he turned his broken arm into energy and injected it all into the Eastern Emperor bell. Clang. Even worse than the previous bell, it announced that the world would stop at this moment. It's like the stop of the clock. In Baichuran's eyes, the world turned into a gray color, the space fragments floating in the sky, the energy storm spreading out of the void. His sword energy, the light spots appeared when his sword tearing the giant god, even his own body, all stopped at this moment. Baichuran's thinking still hasn't stopped, and a strange premonition comes. Whenever Baichuran thinks of manipulating his body, there was a strong will interfering with him, as if he should have stayed motionless at this moment. This is time manipulation. Baichuran's consciousness flashed through such thoughts. He reluctantly moved his eyes, trying to show the eyes of Wise Immortal who was held in one hand by him, but he found that Wise Immortal had already been condensed at this moment. His head stopped in the air in an arc and several green sparks sputtered out of the hollow eye sockets, but the sparks also stopped in the air. Unlike Baichuran, he didn't seem to be able to maintain his consciousness in this space and time. It seems that the only way out is brute force. Mindful of this, Baichuran forcibly lifted the still huge chi in his body, struggling to earn. The entire space trembled faintly, and this gray-white prohibition seemed to be shattered in an instant, but the next moment, there was stronger pressure feedback, pressing Baichuran in place. This pressure was very special, not only oppressing Baichuran's body surface, but also every cell of him, every basic factor that constitutes his body, consciousness and soul, and even the infinite chi in his purple palace. Baichuran felt as if he had been thrown into a swamp full of silt. There was that kind of sticky but terrifying, inexplicable oppressive power on all sides. This strength was even better than when the first Demon King used supernatural powers to control the world to oppress him. It's even scary. His complexion tightened. Baichuran's body fell rapidly in the cosmic starry sky, and when he fell to the footholds that Li Jingyao had left him, he quickly threw out the whip and entangled one of the boulders, but the strong impact was still not there. He pulled this stone platform and fell down together. Wise Immortal was also freed from the time frozen at this time. Just after returning to his senses, he realized that he had fallen rapidly with Baichuran, and quickly reminded, "Be careful. Below this cosmic firmament is the outer void. Don't fall into it." "I know." Baichuran sullenly crossed the Milky Way, and the stars in the Milky Way brushed his body. These high-heat energy bodies only blew sparks on his body surface, but the whip could not stand such damage. In the process of crossing the Milky Way, it was crushed by the stars in the Milky Way. Passing out from below the Milky Way, seeing the darkness outside the void in front of him, Baichuran suddenly raised his hand and slammed his palm into the dark, deep, empty void. The chi turned into a torrent of white energy and was heavily pressed into the void outside the boundary. The energy storm that whirled disorderly in the void collided with this torrent of energy and was actually oppressed backward. With this recoil force, Baichuran was like stepping on a catapult, and leaped back into the sky at a faster speed than before. He crossed the Milky Way again, jumped to a place where the eyes of the galactic giant were equal, reached out and grabbed a piece of waste floating in the air, and then said angrily at the galactic giant, "Damn you fellow, don't force me too much." At this time, after a period of aggregation, the remnants of the star gods seemed to have increased their resonance intensity, which made the consciousness of the galaxy giants also sober. Seeing Baichuran, it shook its head, a burst of brilliance spread, and the broken limbs were reconnected by its energy. Then it looked at Baichuran and his mouth was opened. It spoke with the voice of the Legion. All heaven jealousy must die. When did I provoke you? Baichuran asked back. I said, big man, let's talk about it. Anyway, if you don't have much time and your energy is exhausted, you will return to eternal sleep, and I also don't want to fight now. How about we sit down peacefully and have a cup of tea? By the way, can you tell me the specific information about that heaven jealousy? The galaxy giant god used actions to represent his answer. It raised the Eastern Emperor bell and once again rang the bell that stopped time and space. Baichuran's body was stagnant in the air for a moment, and the next moment time and space flowed. The galaxy giant had already pushed Baichuran in the middle with both fists, desperately squeezing it inward. Although its consciousness was vague, it's very clever. Knowing that its skills were not as good as Baichuran's, and that the movements of its huge body were slower than Baichuran's, so it restricted Baichuran's actions in this way and forced him to fight with it in a compete for strength. Baichuran was not very clear about how much energy it had, but he has used 10% of his force to fight it for a long time. What is certain was that the remaining energy at this time was definitely more than what he can use at the moment, the 10% of the chi in his body. Baichuran used his hands to support the giant's fists but only felt that the power from the left and right had suppressed him for the first time. When he used a little more energy, the urge to break through was immediately raised up uncontrollably. If it said that when time stopped he was punched in his abdomen with force, then now he felt like someone was desperately pressing his stomach. Old Bai, stop being persistent. Wise Immortal's belt was now wrapped around his arm, and this servant, relying on the blessing of immortality from heaven, was now speaking discouraged words without a sense of crisis. Just break through another layer and your strength increases exponentially. After a second, this giant god, let's come and slowly think about the method of building a foundation. Isn't it beautiful? Shut up. Baichuran's hands were suppressed and bent, and his lips trembled and said, Asshole, I can't help it. He roared, and the colossal chi in the purple mansion suddenly slammed, doubled again, and endless power flowed through his limbs, released from his arms and immediately crushed the hands of the galaxy giant. The terrible power made the entire time and space tremble. At this moment, Baichuran successfully broke through and entered the 66,666th layer of the chi refining stage. You animal? Baichuran's voice was trembling, he lowered his head and his tone was full of anger. Do you know what did you do wrong today? The galaxy giant opened his huge mouth, and the clusters of nebula in the mouth gathered, and the powerful and hot energy condensed together to form a beam of light gushing out. But the next moment, the beam of light was cut directly from it, and Baichuran slapped into a knife and rushed to the giant god. He no longer suppressed his strength, waved his palm and cut the sky with a few blazing sword lights, and instantly cut the body of the galaxy giant into pieces. After a few minutes, the sword energy gradually dispersed into the void, and the naked Baichuran stood in the sky of the universe, silent. Old Bai, in fact, you don't need to be so magnificent. After being silent for a long time, Wise Immortal slowly spoke and said, In your case, I think that if there is a secret method of foundation building that can apply to you, then this secret method can definitely ignore the element of chi amount. If not, then I think there is actually no difference between 66,665 and 66,666. Don't talk about it. Do you know the reason why you haven't been able to get the information? Baichuran paused for a while before asking. I know there are usually two reasons for this situation. First, even heaven doesn't know the origin of heavenly jealousy. It is an extraterritorial physique. But it is contradicted to what I know. Heavenly jealousy is obviously a physique born in the world under the control of heaven, and heaven also knows the information of this physique very well. Wise Immortal replied. Second, that is that heaven itself has blocked this information. For some reason, it does not want me to know the information about that heavenly jealousy. Why? Baichuran couldn't help asking. It is said that heaven is ruthless and selfless. With the transaction between you and it, wouldn't it be considered a breach of contract? I've said that heaven is stingy and it is indeed ruthless. But you are wrong about its selflessness. Wise Immortal sneered and said, Among all things in the world which has consciousness, there is no truly selfless existence. Even those saints who do good without demand payback, also work for their own desires and ideals, in order to practice their own way. Heaven is selfless just because it hinders the rules, nothing can be manipulated at will, but as long as it can get into the loopholes of the rules, it will definitely try its best to let the event develop in a direction that is beneficial to itself. Then it thinks that if I know this, it will be detrimental to it. Bai Qiran thought deeply. Nonsense, who wants an uncontrollable thorn in one's own territory? I said, we should almost… Damn, what is that? Wise Immortal exclaimed. Bai Qiran turned his head and found that the galaxy giant who had been divided into the most basic energy by him, the energy clumps scattered in the firmament of the universe, were actually constantly flowing in the direction of the East Emperor Bell. What happened? Bai Qiran said in surprise. I obviously solved the remnant soul of its awakening. Not the remnant soul of the giant god, that giant god is indeed dead. Wise Immortal said solemnly. It's the Eastern Emperor Bell. It is absorbing the surrounding energy and it wants to attack you,